18 years later, a surprising return, discover how she became the millionaire's wife. Emily Parker parked her car in front of the weathered family home, its faded paint telling tales of neglect. 18 years had transformed her from a hopeful girl into a woman scarred by lost dreams. The small town loomed like a specter of her past, whispering accusations and reminders of where she had come from. The headlines that had once glorified her success felt distant, a cruel contrast to what stood before her, the modest home now crumbling under the weight of time. As she stepped out, the familiar scent of damp earth and childhood memories assaulted her senses. The gossiping neighbors were no longer the friendly faces she had hoped to avoid, now they were a looming reminder of her failures. Every step towards the door echoed an internal monologue about ambition, success, and the price she had paid for leaving. She was determined to avoid the judgments she had escaped, yet they gripped her tighter than any embrace. What had she really achieved? A real estate empire shrouded in secret success felt hollow against the background of her loss. The ankles-hugging denim skirt and worn sneakers she wore felt suffocating reminders of her roots and a past that echoed with struggle. She fumbled with the keys, her pulse racing, anxiety twisting in her stomach. Her late aunt, the woman who had guided her with steadfast love, had entrusted her with so much. Could she live up to that legacy? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each box she unpacked was a time capsule of dreams and fears. She found the remnants of childhood prayers for escape that morphed into adult ambitions, yet whispers grazed her ears like a chill wind. How could she think she belonged here again? The judgment of her former mentor, a man who had always deemed her unworthy, twisted in her gut. Yet standing in front of her, with those familiar stormy blue eyes, was Jake, once her confidant, now her anchor. Their comfortable rapport felt strained as they navigated their shared history. Jake, forever tethered to this town, had grown into a sturdy oak, established as a mechanic, family man wrapped in loyalty. The feelings between them simmered just below the surface, complicating their situation. Meanwhile, the local businessman, a figure of intimidation, hovered like a specter, enforcing a status quo she despised. He represented everything she had left behind and now confronted her, ready to crush her dreams before they could grow. As her plans to revitalize her aunt's legacy crystallized in her mind, doubt clawed at her heart. What if she truly couldn't escape where she once belonged? What if her ambition only drove a wedge deeper into her roots? Just as she felt she was gaining control, betrayal from someone she trusted shattered her resolve, leaving her questioning her choices, her integrity. All that seemed to slip away. The stakes were higher than ever, the town's whispers threatened to drown out her voice. As she stood on the precipice of her fears, wrestling with the consequences of her desires, she realized she was at a crossroads. Would she reclaim her family's legacy, or let the heavy hand of her past lead her back into obscurity? Emily clutched the box she had been unpacking, its weight speaking to her uncertainty as she prepared for the confrontation ahead. Fear and determination battled within her, a tumult she could no longer ignore. With every breath she took, the choice loomed larger, teasing her with the promise of a future she could only grasp if she dared to reach for it. As Emily unpacked the last box, a feeling of suffocating nostalgia washed over her. The trinkets within, old trophies, faded photographs, and letters filled with promises of possibility clung to her like the town itself. Each artifact brought forth memories both cherished and haunting. The weight of expectation pressed against her as she contemplated her next move. She picked up a framed photo of her and Jake from years ago, smiling, unburdened, and full of hope. That image presented a sharp contrast to her current reality. She wondered, in that moment, if she could ever recapture that lightness of spirit. The notion of re-entering her former life, full of dreams that felt worlds away, burrowed deep into her psyche. She had become a stranger, not just to the town but to herself. Emily. The sound of Jake's voice jolted her from her reverie. He stepped into the small living room, his presence a complex blend of familiarity and unresolved tension. Despite the years apart, there was a comfort in their shared history that could easily tip into something else, something unresolved and lingering. "You all right?" For a moment, she was hesitant to reply. Here stood the only person who truly understood her journey, and yet, he was also a painful reminder of what she had been running from. Instead of words, she nodded, forcing a smile that felt far too strained. The tension between them was palpable, she sensed the unspoken questions hanging in the air. "Are you really going to try and turn this place around?" he asked, his tone a mixture of skepticism and concern. His voice cut through the haze of self-doubt swirling in her mind. "I have to," she replied, surprising herself with the bluntness of her certainty. "I need to turn this place into something that matters. I can't let my aunt's legacy fade away." Jake studied her for a beat, his expression unreadable. "You know that's not easy, right? It's going to take a lot of work, and people will talk," he cautioned, echoing her own fears. Once again, the whispers of the townsfolk echoed in her mind. They would scrutinize every decision, every mistake. But amid that dread, an ember of defiance flared to life within her. "I'm not afraid of hard work," she declared, affection and gratitude flaring in her heart. "But I need to do it my way." As the conversation unfolded, Emily felt a change within herself, a flicker of resilience igniting in response to Jake's unyielding practicality. She could plan, she could strategize. It wasn't about leaving the past behind, it was about redefining it. Together, they spent the rest of the afternoon evaluating the house, brainstorming potential improvements that would breathe life back into her aunt's legacy. Ideas flowed between them easily, as if the years apart had never severed their connection, yet, even as they sketched out plans and sought solutions, unease nagged at Emily. She noticed how Jake's commitment to his own life here was anchored in safety and predictability. Was she brave enough to risk the success she had fought for, to embrace the uncertainties ahead? She could feel the tendrils of doubt creeping back in, threatening her burgeoning resolve. By the time they wrapped up, darkness had veiled the town. Over cups of tea, Emily could read the deeper questions in Jake's eyes. "What happens if you fail?" he finally voiced, the concern underlying his words palpable. The query hung heavy in the air, nestled between them. Would she cling to her fears, or would she dare to step onto the precipice of possibility? With trembling hands, she set down her cup, the answer forming almost instinctively. "Then I'll just have to try again. I want to let this town, or my past, dictate who I am." As conviction wrapped around her like armor, she sensed something shifting within her. The embers of ambition and risk ignited, and for the first time, her heart beat in rhythm with determination. Yet, with the seeds of change planted, Emily realized the true challenge lay ahead. Would the town allow her to grow, or would its shadows stifle her ambitions once more? The next day promised to be monumental, a turning point she could neither avoid nor predict. As she drifted off to sleep, a single thought echoed in her mind: tomorrow she would confront the businessman who loomed over her plans. The test of her newfound courage awaited her, and with it, the spark of transformation she dared to nurture. The morning sun broke through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, a stark contrast to the turmoil stirring within Emily. She blinked at the bright light, her resolve from the previous night bubbling just below the surface, fighting against the wave of anxiety creeping in. Today was the day she would face the businessman whose influence had long overshadowed her aunt's legacy. As she moved through her morning routine, each task seemed to twist with the weight of anticipation. The sharp clink of her coffee mug on the table signaled her readiness, but an internal alarm bell clamored. What if her plans backfired? What if she triumphed but found herself alone in the triumph? The fear felt visceral, almost tangible, echoing the doubts that had plagued her since her return. Pushing aside the worries, she drew in a deep breath, reminding herself of why she had returned. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for a future that honored her aunt's spirit. With that resolve, she grabbed her notebook full of ideas and strategies. As she reviewed her notes on the potential improvements she desired to make, she caught sight of a passage she had written about resilience. To build is to risk, she had penned, but to create is to become. Feeling invigorated, she glanced at the clock and realized it was time to leave. Each step toward the downtown office space felt like a march into a new chapter of her life. The path was familiar, yet each street, every corner, was infused with meaning and memories that urged her forward. Upon arriving at the office, the ambience shifted. The air grew thick with tension and uncertainty as she stepped into the lobby, where glass walls surrounded the expansive space filled with busy professionals. It felt intimidating, a stark reminder of the high stakes she faced. But Emily straightened her shoulders, fighting the urge to retreat. She'd come too far to let fear dictate her fate. The receptionist greeted her with a slight nod, and Emily felt her heart race as she was led to the conference room. Each footfall echoed back her intention. This was not merely a meeting, it was a reclamation of her narrative. She hoped to articulate her vision convincingly, but the prospect of pitting her dreams against a formidable opponent made her palms sweat. When she entered the room, the businessman sat at the head of the oval table, his demeanor projecting authority. His reputation preceded him. He was known for his ruthless tactics and cold business acumen. Emily swallowed hard, pushing down her doubt as she shook hands with him, catching a glimpse of the calculating glint in his eyes. "Ms. Adams," he began, his voice smooth yet dismissive, "I trust you understand the stakes of this discussion." A spark ignited in her. This was the moment for her voice to emerge from years of silence. "I do," she replied steadily. "And I'm here to discuss a partnership that honors what my aunt built, not just as a business venture, but as a legacy." As she launched into her presentation, articulating her vision, the uncertainty that had plagued her began to dissipate. With each statistic and visualization of her plans, her confidence solidified. She felt the powerful shift within herself beyond the need for validation from the past. She was asserting her place as a major player in this game. But just as Emily began to sense affirmation in the room, the businessman leaned back, a smirk creeping onto his face. "And what do you bring to the table, really? Passion alone rarely wins over cold, hard facts." A rush of indignation surged through her. It was a direct confrontation of her worth, and in that moment, something inside her ignited a realization that she could not back down from this challenge. She needed to showcase that her passion was infused with depth, capable of transforming a forgotten building into a thriving hub of creativity and innovation. She opened her mouth to reply, fully prepared to counter his dismissal, when a sudden thought struck her. She may have been modest in resources, but she was rich in vision, a quality that could transcend numbers. With determination breaking through the uncertainty, she declared, "You may see this as a business transaction, but I see it as an opportunity to breathe life back into a piece of this town's heritage. It's not just numbers, it's about what truly matters." The room fell into a tense silence. Emily's heart raced, but now it felt alive with purpose. She was not just reclaiming her voice, she was redefining her identity. Would her conviction be enough to sway him, or would it only serve to deepen his disdain? As she awaited his response, adrenaline coursed through her veins, embracing the thrill of standing on the precipice of potential. Would this be the turning point? The door slammed shut behind them as another figure entered the room, her childhood friend Jake, a look of urgency etched across his face. The tension hung thick in the air, and Emily's mind raced. Had he come to support her, or was it to cut ties with her ambitions? The confrontation was poised to escalate, and Emily's heart pounded in anticipation. Would she emerge stronger from this trial, or would the shadows of her past pull her back into the depths of doubt? Jake's sudden presence disrupted the charged atmosphere, yet it also opened a door she hadn't anticipated. His eyes scanned the room, landing on her with a mix of urgency and unyielding support. Though uncertainty flickered in Emily's chest, his presence provided a spark of reassurance. She was no longer alone, she had someone at her side who knew her history and capabilities. "Emily, I hope I'm not interrupting," Jake interjected, his voice steady yet tinged with concern. There was something solidifying about his tone that registered within her as more than mere pleasantries. It implied he understood the stakes. Not at all, she replied, struggling to mask the conflict roiling inside her. I was just discussing a proposal. The businessman, visibly irritated by the intrusion, waved his hand dismissively. This is irrelevant. We were in the middle of an important conversation, he snapped, already shifting his posture back to one of dominance, but Emily seized the moment, steeling herself under Jake's supportive gaze. Actually, I think Jake's presence is entirely relevant. He has seen firsthand what my vision can achieve. This isn't just about numbers, it's about creating real impact. Jake stepped forward, his confidence pouring into the room. Emily's ideas are grounded in more than just idealism. She has shown resilience and determination that only someone who has faced true adversity can possess. If anyone can foster a transformative partnership here, it's her. The businessman's eyes narrowed, calculation a background to his irritation. Emily could sense the tension as he weighed their combined presence, perhaps questioning the integrity of her proposal now that it was backed by a man in the room. Would this shift help or hinder her cause? As Emily took a deep breath, Jake's unwavering support fueled her confidence, and she continued with fervor. The legacy I'm talking about is built on trust and creativity. It's about reviving a space that connects our community rather than exploiting it for short-term gain. I'm dedicated to putting in the hard work necessary to see it flourish. The businessman shifted uneasily. That sounds all well and good, but you seem to overlook the realities of the current market. It's competitive. You can have passion, but I need facts, market projections. In that moment, as she prepared to counter his argument with her own research, a firm resolve coursed through her. Hidden under layers of self-doubt lay her expertise. Years of careful learning and silent observation had revealed competencies she had almost forgotten. While you may prioritize numbers tied to immediate profitability, she began slowly, I believe in cultivating value that resonates deeply within the community. Our metrics can be different, they can include social impact, sustainability, and cultural enrichment. This approach doesn't merely aim for profit but for true legacy and change. The businessman's incredulous expression faltered for a brief moment. Was it doubt, recognition, or purely annoyance? Emily clenched her jaw, feeling emboldened. There was strength in articulating a vision. Her vision, Jake murmured, you're right. It's not just about ROI, it's about protecting the very essence of what makes this community worth investing in. Realizing their voices were forming a collective strength, Emily pressed forward, her pulse swift with determination. Every number can tell a story, but stories can also shift perspectives. I want to build places where people feel connected, where stories thrive. The businessman straightened, assessing her face with an intensity that suggested he wasn't quite expecting this unveiling. It was as if he wasn't merely confronted by Emily's words and passion, but also by the steely determination emanating from the two of them, fortified by camaraderie and shared history. Suddenly, the air in the room felt different, teetering between possibility and rejection. The moment lingered, each second dripping with anticipation like a pendulum swinging. Was he considering her vision seriously now, or was that merely a flicker of hope? Before she fell back into doubt, before he could respond, an email notification chimed softly from Jake's pocket. He fumbled to silence it, but not before glancing at the screen. His expression shifted to one of urgency. Sorry, I need to take this. As he stepped away, leaving Emily alone with the businessman, the floor beneath her felt less assured. Had Jake been a supportive crutch, or had he shifted the balance of the negotiation in her favor? Now, staring down the businessman, uncertainty began to creep back in. Alone, with her voice quivering but resolute, would her passion and newfound strategy prove compelling enough to sway the hardened mind before her? Emily braced herself as silence engulfed the room again. The stakes had escalated, and a vital crossroads was ahead. What would her next step reveal? Would it catalyze her vision or unravel it entirely? The silence in the room stifled the air around Emily, her pulse racing with the weight of expectation. The businessman's gaze was a relentless pressure, scrutinizing, dissecting her every thought. She had a moment to collect herself, to align her intentions with her actions, but an uneasy flicker of doubt clouded her mind. Was she ready to stand alone in this pivotal moment, armed only with her vision? "Let us be honest here, Emily," the businessman began, his voice cutting through the stillness like a knife. "You come with a grand idea, but I operate on results, not dreams. What can you realistically promise? Numbers that appease investors?" She felt a surge of frustration but caught herself. The temptation to retreat into defensiveness was strong, yet she realized retreating meant abandoning the pursuit of change and authenticity she had been fueling for so long. No more hesitation, no more playing down her truth. "While I understand the necessity for numbers, I also understand that every successful venture starts with an unshakable belief in its mission. I can lay out the data, but I refuse to reduce my vision to simple graphs and projections. My commitment doesn't just speak to the return on investment, it speaks to a new era of ethical entrepreneurship." The businessman's brow lifted in surprise, but Emily saw the evaluation return as he shifted back into an analytical stance. "Interesting rhetoric. But I need to see this translated into actionable plans. Can you deliver that?" Her mind raced through her years of experience, her studies, and the community stories she had collected like treasures. "I can provide a comprehensive plan with alternative metrics that showcase our potential not just for revenue growth, but also for social value. This isn't merely an investment, it's a unique opportunity to redefine what success looks like." He leaned back, crossing his arms, clearly intrigued but still skeptical. "If you're so confident, present your case. If your ideals can push past the calculus of profit, show me how." Emily took a deep breath, her conviction crystallizing into clarity. "Let us break it down. Our initial phase will involve community engagement activities that boost visibility and establish goodwill. That will lead to a phased project that integrates local artisans, innovators, and education, creating a ripple effect that not only generates revenue but builds a loyal consumer base." The businessman stared at her, contemplating, his exterior a mask hiding unknown thoughts. There was a slight twitch of interest in his eyes, but she could feel the weight of skepticism still hanging palpably in the air. "What am I doing?" she questioned internally. "Am I diving into too deep waters here?" But then Jake's supportive presence echoed in her mind, a reminder of the strength she possessed. The doubts receded, allowing her to forge ahead, undeterred. "There will be risks, yes. But every significant win is contingent on calculated risks. If we embed our initiatives into the community fabric, we are setting ourselves up for sustainable growth," she offered, her voice gaining an edge. "Aligning ethical responsibility with profitability isn't merely possible, it's necessary in today's landscape." Just as he opened his mouth to respond, Jake returned to the room, the urgency still etched on his face. The businessman's eyes darted between them, and Emily seized the moment. "I'm not here to beg for favors, I'm here to forge a partnership that holds meaningful value for all involved." Jake positioned himself beside her, his presence an additional assurance. "What Emily is offering is not just creativity, it's a transformation of business norms. We're on the brink of a new approach to investment. Are you willing to consider a different paradigm, or will you remain ensnared in traditional limitations?" His words struck harder than she expected, filling the tension-laden air with a fresh challenge. The businessman, caught momentarily off balance, was left to assess the collective strength of their argument. Emily focused on his expression, watching the shifts of emotions that flashed briefly over his face. For the first time, she saw not just a businessman but someone wrestling with an unfamiliar choice. This was her opportunity, a critical moment that could redefine everything for her, but just as the atmosphere began to thrum with a potential breakthrough, a sharp knock on the door interrupted them. The businessman's attention snapped away, and Emily felt the air thicken once more. Their moment hung suspended, the weight of possibility caught in a fragile balance. What would lie behind that door? Emily's heart raced, teetering between hope and uncertainty as a new complication edged into the fray. Would it disrupt her fragile momentum or shift the course entirely? The knocking reverberated, breaking the tense silence like thunder, the kind that shakes you awake. Emily's gaze flicked to Jake, searching for reassurance, but his expression mirrored her unease. The businessman's body language shifted, tension coiling in his shoulders as he considered the potential disruption. Emily felt a pulse of anxiety, the uncertain rhythm of her heartbeat echoing the precarious balance they had fought to establish. "Who is it?" The businessman called, his voice still laced with authority, even as uncertainty crept in. A moment passed. Another knock, louder this time, as if demanding rather than requesting entry. Emily couldn't shake the intrusive thought, what if this was the end of her pitch? Just as she had begun to carve her path, what if another factor derailed everything? Yet, deep within her, another feeling stirred, a quiet resolve that ignited a flicker of something more powerful than fear. Every setback had been a learning opportunity. Every closed door had led her to an open window. She would not allow herself to be rattled now. Stay focused, she told herself silently, reviewing the plan she had rehearsed in her mind. The framework was there, robust yet adaptable, ready to withstand whatever storm might be approaching. The door opened abruptly, and in walked a familiar figure, her former mentor, Celia. Emily's heart tightened. Celia's upward trajectory in the business world had been a source of both inspiration and an unwelcome reminder of Emily's own struggles. She had spent years following her own vision, battling doubts and the harsh realities of entrepreneurship, only to find herself face to face with someone who had effortlessly climbed the ranks, embodying the success she longed for. "Celia." The businessman's surprise jolted Emily. "What brings you here?" Celia's gaze swept over the room, faltering momentarily on Emily. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I just left a meeting nearby and thought I'd check in." Before he could respond, Emily cleared her throat, forcing a confident tone. "Actually, we were just discussing a partnership, and I could use your insights." It was bold, even reckless, but an opportunity had presented itself, and it demanded seizing. Celia's eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity piquing as she nodded slowly. "Interesting. What's your proposition?" Emily didn't hesitate. This was a chance not only to impress the businessman but to showcase her vision to someone who commanded respect. "Our venture isn't just about profit, it's about redefining success. We're exploring ethical entrepreneurship, aiming to connect innovations with community needs and integrate sustainable practices. The potential for revenue growth, while crucial, sits alongside our social impact goals." Celia appraised her, the earlier spark of doubt in Emily's chest ebbing away, replaced by a growing conviction. This was the moment to lay out her hard-earned convictions, showcase her resilience, and challenge the status quo all in front of her mentor. "And where will you find the resources for execution?" Celia asked, her tone probing meticulously for gaps in Emily's optimism. With determined clarity, Emily leaned into her strengths. "I believe in collaboration with local businesses and creators. They understand the landscape better than anyone. Our first steps involve leveraging their insights to create tailored initiatives that resonate with consumers while driving revenue. The results will speak for themselves." Celia smiled slightly, a recognition of the effort behind Emily's words. "That sounds promising, but how will you know if it's actually working?" Emily felt the challenge energize her. She already had considered this. "We'll implement flexible metrics that evaluate not just financial success but community engagement and satisfaction levels as well. This way, we can pivot as necessary, ensuring we stay true to our mission while achieving our goals." The air in the room shifted, a coalescence of cautious optimism and critical scrutiny. The businessman seemed intrigued, and Celia's focus intensified. Her gaze sharp, contemplating the intertwining of visions. Just as Emily felt the weight of hope encapsulating the atmosphere, Celia crossed her arms, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "Are you ready to handle the backlash that may arise?" Her tone shifted, serious, steadying the room with a challenge Emily hadn't expected. The question hung heavy in the air, throwing Emily back into the internal fray of self-doubt and undertones of anxiety. The prospect of challenges ahead loomed large. But behind those questions lay the grittiness of her journey, every sleepless night, every heartbreak, and every moment of clarity that had shaped her resolve. She inhaled deeply, ready to respond. This was her chance, not just to prove herself to the businessman but to seize her place as a leader willing to tread the rocky paths of entrepreneurship. Because if we're going to shift paradigms, Emily began with unwavering voice, it will undoubtedly rattle the cage of conventional mindsets. Are we ready to embrace that? As she posed the challenge, the door creaked open again, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. This time, uncertainty gnawed at her insides. Would it be reinforcements, or yet another obstacle destined to face her fierce resolve? The stakes had never felt higher. Emily's heart raced as the door swung open, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the harsh fluorescent light in the hallway. The room held its breath, the charged silence pregnant with possibilities. She could barely see who had entered, but instinctively, she braced herself for impact, every fiber of her being prepared for a confrontation laced with unexpected complications. As the figure stepped into full view, the tension shifted slightly. It was Alex, another former colleague from her previous job who had left one afternoon, seemingly disappearing into thin air. In the business world, Alex had been a noted disruptor, quickly amassed a reputation for shaking up conventional theories and strategies. The flicker of surprise in Emily's chest mingled with unease. He had never been one to shy away from speaking his mind. "Didn't he expect to see you here, Emily?" he said, his voice smooth but edged with skepticism. "Is this where the magic happens?" Quickly gathering her thoughts, Emily forced a smile, steeling herself for the inevitable critique. "Actually, it's very much in progress. We were just discussing a partnership aimed at pioneering ethical entrepreneurship perspectives." Alex raised an eyebrow, his expression a blend of intrigue and doubt. "Sustainable practices? That's a tall order. Given today's climate, aren't you worried about running into outspoken critics?" With every word he spoke, Emily analyzed the layers of his challenge, discovering a tug-of-war within herself, a part that wanted to play it safe versus the part that was determined to rise to the occasion. She absorbed his skepticism but wouldn't let it derail her. "Criticism is part of any significant change," Emily asserted, her voice gaining strength. "And if we truly want to reshape the conversation around success and entrepreneurship, we have to be prepared to face it head-on. My journey has taught me valuable lessons on resilience. I believe that if our core values are solid, we can withstand whatever backlash arises." Celia, observing the exchange, interjected with a measured tone. "Alex brings up a valuable point. Navigating tension effectively will be critical to your venture's survival. But I want to hear, how do you plan to maintain your commitment to ethical practices when faced with potential financial pressure?" The question sliced through the atmosphere like a knife, but rather than dampen her spirits, it ignited a flame within Emily. It was this very query she had rehearsed, one she had anticipated from the outset. "Integrity and impact will drive our metrics of success," she replied, her voice rising with conviction. "The revenue will be important, yes, but equally fundamental is how we engage authentically with the community. This framework will serve as a compass, ensuring we never lose sight of values during tough times." In that moment, Emily felt her walls fortified, doubts began to crumble in the wake of her mounting determination. She had worked too hard and endured too much to let the opinions of others dictate her path. The room appeared transformed as conversations danced between potential challenges and aspirations, and she realized that she was learning just as much as she was teaching. Alex seemed to assess her, the earlier undercurrent of skepticism softening. "Impressive. It takes courage to lean into conflicts when the stakes are so high. Just remember, standing your ground will invite scrutiny, and you won't always have support," he warned, but with a note of respect. This time, instead of recoiling from potential criticism, Emily slowly nodded, taking in his words. "You're right. But I am ready for the conflict. That makes me stronger, not weaker." The businessman leaned back in his chair, genuinely pondering the exchange, and Emily felt a surge of renewed hope. This dialogue had sparked something powerful within her, an understanding that her fortitude could serve as both shield and weapon. As she settled into the moment, an unsettling thought dug at her consciousness: was she truly prepared to navigate this new territory, fully aware of risks entailed? What if standing her ground didn't guarantee success, but instead unraveled her hard-fought progress? The implications weighed heavily, and as the session continued, she sensed a pivotal shift ahead, a crossroads where she would need to confront intimate parts of herself, parts that would reveal if she was cut out for the revolutionary journey she envisioned. The next few minutes mattered greatly. Would she yield to fear or rise to the challenge ahead? Each decision could reshuffle the landscape, altering not just her future, but the futures of those around her too. Suddenly, something shifted in the doorframe as another figure emerged, this time wearing the distinct air of authority. Instinctively, Emily felt the stakes rise again. The door would open a new avenue laden with risks and revelations, forcing her to confront elements of her professional identity she had long buried. What would this new intruder bring? A measured stride broke the tension in the room. The figure filling the doorway emanated confidence and command. Margaret Lane, an industry titan and the leader of a venture capital firm renowned for its no-nonsense approach, had entered. She had a reputation for investing only in the most promising ideas and for swiftly dismissing those that fell short. Emily's gut twisted with both fear and anticipation. This was her first encounter with someone of Margaret's stature since leaving her previous job, and the stakes felt impossibly high. "Emily, I hear you're making waves," Margaret said, her gaze piercing through the rest of the room as she strode in. "Sustainable entrepreneurship. Bold move. I hope you're ready for the heavy lifting that comes with it." The gravity of Margaret's presence compelled Emily to stand straighter, to embrace the challenge. "I believe in creating a business model that fosters both profit and purpose," she replied, hoping to project her inner strength through her words. "Ethical practices can coexist with profitability, they should be interwoven, not set apart." Margaret nodded slightly, as if weighing Emily's responses. "Your confidence is admirable, but let us be pragmatic. How would you handle the inevitable pushback once your name is on the line?" Emily's heart raced again. This was the sort of moment she had mentally prepared for. Embracing feedback, both positive and negative, is essential. Insulating myself from criticism would only lead to stagnation. I plan to leverage diverse perspectives, ensuring our business model evolves rather than remains static. As she spoke, Emily began to untangle a thread of self-doubt. Here was an opportunity to showcase her capabilities, to stand alongside Margaret and be seen not just as a participant but as a competitor. The thought both thrilled and frightened her. Margaret studied Emily thoughtfully, a hint of a smile creeping into her otherwise stern demeanor. "You know, I've watched your career evolve from the sidelines. Your tenacity isn't in question. However, commitment to ethical principles can often lead to blind spots. What if a lucrative offer comes from a less than ethical source? Would you turn it down outright?" The question felt like a sudden drop into icy water, breaking the hopeful bubble Emily had built. In that instant, all the lofty ideals she'd entertained swirled around in her mind, putting her core values to the test. Would she walk away from potential success if it meant compromising her convictions? "Integrity is non-negotiable," Emily managed, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Yet, it's a fine line to walk. I would need to evaluate the broader impact, who benefits and at what cost." Margaret leaned in closer, her intense gaze unwavering. "Understanding your potential weaknesses speaks to your self-awareness. But don't mistake opportunity for morality, they don't always coexist. In this arena, survival necessitates some tough decisions, and the choices often reveal true character." The weight of Margaret's words settled on Emily like a blanket. Was she prepared to confront those dilemmas if they arose? The prospect of success now felt tangibly entwined with moral ambiguity, and the path ahead was no longer merely about professional ambition, it would test the very fiber of her being. As the conversation shifted back to strategies and business metrics, vague doubts lingered in Emily's mind like specters, each more haunting than the last. How prepared was she to face a world that valued profit over principle? Before she could spiral further, Margaret wrapped up the meeting with a curt nod, her voice commandingly clear. "I'll be watching your progress closely. Remember, resilience isn't just about standing your ground, it's knowing when to bend and adapt without losing your core identity." As Margaret exited, the room seemed to exhale, but Emily felt a storm brewing within. The dialogue had stirred questions she had yet to answer. What compromises might emerge on her journey? How would she balance ethics with ambition when pushed to her limits? The stakes had never felt higher. Each choice now loomed large, and the uncertainty of her future gnawed at the edges of her confidence. Emily understood that this was merely the beginning of an uncharted territory. Would she redefine success on her terms, or would the ruthless nature of the industry redefine her? With every heartbeat echoing in her ears, a new determination ignited within her. The time had come to face the shadows lingering in the corners of her vision. Would she confront them head-on, or would they engulf her in the process? Emily left the meeting room feeling the weight of Margaret's scrutiny alongside an electric jolt of determination. The taste of challenge twisted in her mouth, and with each stride towards her desk, her mind raced through the questions that had formed during their discussion. Could she really navigate the murky waters of ethical dilemmas while pursuing her vision of sustainable entrepreneurship? The stakes felt like high tide, ready to wash away the foundation she had painstakingly begun to build. She settled at her desk, the scent of fresh coffee wafting over to her as the bustle of her new colleagues continued around her, a fluid background to her intense introspection. Each tapping of keyboards was a reminder of the clock ticking down on every decision she made from this moment forward. Every missed opportunity would only deepen her resolve. She knew that now. To combat the shadow of uncertainty, Emily drafted a strategy outline. The specifics of her business plan were designed to highlight sustainability, intertwining profit with purpose, but now she had to turn that vision into actionable steps. Carefully, she listed potential partnerships with organizations that shared her values. Tapping the sphere of like-minded entrepreneurs, she sought to build an ecosystem grounded in mutual growth. But as she began to draft potential outreach emails, the specter of Margaret's probing questions loomed again. What about the compromises? Would she ever have to sell out to keep her dreams afloat? The fear of tempting offers from less-than ethical sources gripped her. To test the depth of her conviction, she needed to assert her values now. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former mentor, Daniel, appeared. "Let's grab lunch soon. I want to hear about your new venture." She had developed a rapport with Daniel based on trust and shared ideals, and she regarded him as a sounding board for her most pressing dilemmas. She texted back quickly, organizing a lunch for later that week. Each morsel of food at their lunch felt heavy with expectation. As they exchanged pleasantries, Emily studied Daniel's face, searching for moments when he would engage more deeply in the conversation. She described her vision, her drive to balance ethics and profitability, her aspirations for sustainable entrepreneurship. Daniel listened intently, nodding but also maintaining an intrigued silence that hinted at his own hidden thoughts. After a pause, Daniel leaned in closer, his gray eyes serious. "You know, Emily, the road you're traveling isn't easy. I've seen good people twist themselves into knots trying to stay true in a world that incentivizes cutting corners. How do you plan to navigate that?" Emily pressed her lips together. "I believe that by forming strategic partnerships, I won't be alone. If I gather a team that shares my perspective, we can hold each other accountable." "Accountability is commendable," he replied, but a shadow flickered across his face. "Just remember the industry, and that it plays by different rules. Make no mistake, the stakes will become very personal." Her chest tightened. "I'm prepared for that. I've considered the implications of growth. Turning down the wrong deal could sting. I want to stay true to who I am." Daniel studied her for a heartbeat. "Good," he said finally, but there was a caveat in his tone. "Your clarity is refreshing in this environment. Just know, the moment you compromise on your core values, it becomes easier to do it again. Remain vigilant, and always trust your instinct." His words sunk into her like an anchor. The resolve she felt began to meld with a deeper understanding of the unrealized challenges that lay before her. Yes, she would face these dilemmas head-on, welcoming the conflicts to define her path. As they finished their lunch, Emily's thoughts crystallized around a singular belief: her authentic self would not just survive, it would thrive. The prospect of working in uncharted territory was daunting, but her confidence was fueled by realization she was capable of fighting for what she believed in, and yet, as Daniel walked her to her car, a seed of doubt still nagged at her intuition. Was she ready to confront the harder questions that would undoubtedly arise? As she drove back to work, Emily felt a soft tension curl in her stomach, hinting that her journey was only beginning. What price would she ultimately pay for her convictions, and at what cost would she discover her own limits? Would her commitment to integrity strengthen her, or would it become her greatest vulnerability? The day asked for answers. Tomorrow, a pitch competition awaited, filled with influential investors, and one more defining moment was on the horizon. Would she stand firm or falter under the pressure of expectation? Emily Parker stood in front of the grand old building that had once been the heart of her aunt's legacy. The morning light spread a golden hue over the exterior, illuminating its age-worn beauty. This was her moment, the culmination of the journey that had transformed her not just from a girl desperate to escape, but into a woman fueled by purpose, commitment, and newfound clarity. 18 years of wrestling with self-doubt and grappling with the shadows of her past had culminated here, against the backdrop of the community that had once suffocated her ambitions. She embraced the nervous fluttering in her stomach. Today, she would participate in a pitch competition that could elevate her vision into reality. The stakes were high, but as Emily studied her notes, the words she had painstakingly crafted resonated with confidence. She recalled her previous encounters: the businessman's skepticism, Margaret's piercing questions, the way doubt had once clung to her like a second skin. Those moments drove her forward, sharpening her resolve. Each exchange had fortified the foundation of her vision. Today, she would show that a commitment to ethical entrepreneurship could be both viable and revolutionary. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights brightened, casting her in a warm glow. She surveyed the room filled with investors and peers, their gazes expectant, even skeptical. Instead of shying away from this scrutiny, she inhaled deeply, intending to channel her passion. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to speak not only about numbers but about a vision that intertwines profitability with purpose," she began, her voice steady. As she launched into her presentation, recounting her journey, she noticed how the flickers of uncertainty began to fade. The statistics she presented outlined a market ready to embrace sustainable practices, a community eager to invest in its own revival. With every word, Emily saw the faces in the audience begin to shift from indifference to interest. Recalling her first interactions, the challenges posed by Alex and Margaret, she found strength in their skepticism. "I understand the complexities we face," she asserted, "but we must move beyond traditional measures of success. Our metrics must reflect not just financial outcomes, but the social impact we foster." Her passion wove through her sentences, and she felt the energy of her ideas breathe life into the room. Yet, as she approached the conclusion, she knew she could not shy away from addressing the inevitable challenges. She stood firm in front of the audience, her conviction unwavering. "I know that I am not just proposing a business, I am inviting you to join me in redefining what success looks like. Together, we can create a community that thrives on ethical values, craftsmanship, and innovation. A community willing to embrace the discomfort that comes with change." In those final moments, as her words echoed in the stillness, she felt a rush of exhilaration. This was a consolidation of her growth, a reflection of her journey, the struggles she had overcome now crystallizing into purpose. As she stepped off the stage, applause filled the room, a tangible testament to her hard work and dedication. Emily smiled, the weight on her shoulders lifting. She had not only conquered her own fears but had also demonstrated her capacity to articulate a vision grounded in her values. Later, as she received feedback from the panel, Emily was met with encouragement and insight, but more importantly, she felt recognized, not just for her ideas, but for her journey. Investors expressed interest in collaborating with her, intrigued by her commitment to remain true to her principles. Validation washed over her. This was the fulfillment she had sought. Achieving the initial funding was not merely a personal triumph, it was the public acknowledgement of her competency, her knowledge, and her resilience. She was no longer the girl who abandoned her past, she had embraced it, and in doing so, had crafted a future that honored her aunt's legacy. Emily left the venue that day with more than just investment opportunities. The feeling of solid confidence enveloped her, a concrete recognition of her achievements. She had become a force in the entrepreneurial world, she stood firmly on her path and was finally resolute in who she was, an architect of change, rooted in integrity. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of promise, Emily Parker smiled. She had achieved what she once thought was impossible and was fiercely proud of her journey, a journey marked not just by professional accomplishments, but by authentic self-discovery and profound growth. In this moment of satisfaction, she understood that the truest essence of success lay not in the accolades received but in the journey taken to reclaim her voice and redefine her future. Now, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.